Welcome, everybody, back to that conversation. And today is the first new episode of 2026. The last episode we had was actually from 2025. It was a conversation that was had with Pam Kennedy in 4 parts about culture and race and the difference between the two. And I felt as though that was necessary. In our conversations, with people, we do see that there it seems to be a conflation between the two, and we wanted to clarify the difference and why both are so significant. We had our opinions. Sometimes we differed. Sometimes we agreed. But nonetheless, I think it's a conversation that many people within Cumberland County are having concerning the changes that are happening in our communities. And some people are having a rough time with it. Some people are very happy that it's happening, and some people are indifferent. But nonetheless, it is a conversation that's happening, around the dinner table or in front of the TV or in the supermarkets and that. And I'm happy that we're able to have it. And, for those of us who sometimes are a little bit apprehensive, to say the least, about conversations that might lead to conflict, I think it's important that it's way better to communicate than it is to fight. And I think in having these conversations, we allow people to open up the door to these types of opinions and hopefully clarifications. So very grateful about that. 2026 is going to be no different. I think that we want to have more conversations concerning more things that we see within the community of practice that we are a part of, in therapy as well as in consultation. And there are some things that we wanted to tackle. And one of the things that I wanted to introduce, I'll wait for my other colleagues to be a part of it, is just what we've seen in terms of drugs and alcohol and the relationships that people have with them. I, coming from Europe and then also from Ontario, and then now here, I've noticed that there is a culture of alcohol that's very different than the culture that I grew up with when I was overseas for the many years that I was there, starting at 15 until I was about 28. And I had a conversation with people that were actually, well, I can't say the organization. One of the people that I was speaking to made mention of the culture of binge drinking versus drinking, and I was kind of giving my 2 cents about it. And in Europe, generally speaking, even when I was 17 in Germany, it was common for people to have a beer or a glass of wine at dinner. That wasn't uncommon. The goal wasn't to get drunk, though. It was usually a complimentary drink to take the edge off, or just even sometimes to make the food taste better, wine sipping and things of that nature. But here it's a little bit different from what I've seen. There's some that are really struggling with this culture of binge drinking. And I kind of wanted to get to the bottom of that, or at least speak about it and find out what this culture really is and where it stems from. And so I'm going to speak to people that are a little bit more educated than I am on the topic, and hopefully, we can have conversations on it, because so many of the men, because I do work with men, I don't work with any female identifying people. I work with the men, and so many of the incidences that I see of men who have either abused or have made poor decisions in life that had consequences, bringing them to DV court or which is domestic violence court, or having some kind of court order of some sort, has been around alcohol and the abuse of it, or even if it's for one night, making a very horrible decision coming home, or maybe even getting behind the wheel. And I see it so prevalent within our community now, of people who really drink a lot and drink to excess, and then overdrink, and then end up making very poor decisions while drunk. And the relationship between alcohol and depression, and alcohol and violence, and alcohol and plenty of other things is interesting to me. I've always been around alcohol, as I said before, when I was in Europe, and I didn't see these numbers. I've never noticed it as much as I do here, and so I really wanted to speak on that. And I know that it's sensitive because there are people who are responsible drinkers who, as responsible as you can be, drinking and handle it quite well and don't get into trouble and don't make horrible decisions and hurt other people. But then there's the other, and there's so many more people who unfortunately are making really bad decisions, which lead, into that party atmosphere. Oftentimes, it leads to drugs, and that leads to another conversation that we'll be having in 2026, which has to do with substance abuse, particularly drugs. So leading from alcohol into drugs, and then the abuse, self-abuse, and then abuse of others. Want to touch on that and see what the therapists have been dealing with, and also what the council's been dealing with concerning people who have this relationship with both. And I know that it must be hard. Any addiction is difficult to break, and that's the whole point of it, is that to be addicted means that you've become reliant on it in many cases, which leads us to another conversation that we will be having in 2026, which will be about the addiction of pornography. Now, cover your ears or don't, but even 12-year-olds, 10, 11, 9, understand what pornography is. And for most of us who are listening to the radio, I presume that we would know that as well. And I think it's time to have that conversation as well, and give some statistics as to what that does to people, our brain, and specifically male identifying, and what effect that pornography has on our society. Pro and con. Some people see pros, many people see cons. How it correlates to some of the other statistics that are prevalent in many of the clients that we deal with. So I just figured that I would jump on here and just let people know that there are conversations that need to be had that I think are still taboo, ones that I think we would all like to have with our children, with our spouses, with our partners, with our colleagues, because I think everybody knows someone who either struggles with it, or we're one of them who struggle with it, or who have struggled with it. And so this all has a lot to do with our mental health and our physical being. And I hope that in 2026 that many of us will be able to not only have these conversations, but do something about it and put our words into actions in really trying to either stem the cause of these things or deal with them better than we have been, because it is a silent truth that many people are struggling. And we call it mental health, but really it's health in general. And so I hope that the upcoming conversations that we do have will be one that's informative, one that's intelligent, one that hopefully has an impact on those that are listening, and hopefully starts conversations at home that eventually can impact our lives individually and collectively as a society. So for the people that are part of this program, on that conversation, we'd like to wish you a happy 2026 as we begin these conversations. Just always keep in mind that we are starting them, we're not finishing them. If you want to reach us, you can. We can be found on Facebook. You can drop a comment there or direct message us about things that you may want us to speak on or speak about, things that you see in the community. We'd love to hear your feedback on some of the episodes that we've already had over the past year. And our long-form interviews and conversations would be found there as well. So until next time, hopefully you tune into that conversation and enjoy our conversations for you. Take care.